How's it going, everyone? This is Lana Teramae from Metal Express Radio. Today, my special guest is the one, the only, Brian Vollmer from the Canadian hard rock band Helix. He's here to talk about the band's latest release, Helix 50, the best of, which can be purchased through the band's website, planethelix.com, so stick around for the full interview. Alright, so Helix 50, the album's already out, I believe, already, because the release party was May 21st, is that correct?
Yes, it was released 2 days ago. We were up in Toronto at the Mississauga Bowl, I believe it's called,
Mm-hmm.
and Crown X Recordings released the album. We had about 100 people there, I guess. We did uh, about 5 or 6 songs acoustically with Sean Kelly, and when I say we, I mean Daryl Gray, my bass player, and myself, and Sean Kelly. And we talked, I think, for about an hour and a half and played some songs, and it was a warm, fuzzy feeling in the room.
Yeah, and speaking of Daryl Gray, I believe he's featured on a couple of the tracks. They're re-recording Rock You and the new song Stand Up, is that correct?
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, not stand up. No, stand up is actually Sted Howland, who played for Blackfoot, and Lita Ford and Wasp.
okay, my apologies. Alright, well, Rock You, let's start with that. So, how did this collaboration come together? Because the music video looks like a lot of fun.
Well, Greg Campbell of Crown X found out that the guys were going to be in Toronto for a corporate gig, I think, for Foo Bar, the movie, the second one. And he knows they're all Canadian boys that grew up in Helix. And so he approached them about re-recording Rock You. We were coming back from Western Canada from doing a gig in Winnipeg or someplace like that. Can't remember now. And we went straight from the airport right to the studio and banged her off in a day, filmed it, everything. And it was a great experience to be with Rock Royalty. And that's really what Todd Kearns, Brent Fitz, and Phil X are. They're Rock Royalty now, and they're Canadian.
Yeah, and Phillips, he really puts his own spin to the guitar solo. I was listening to them back to back yesterday, and it's quite a little bit different from the original. I believe the original was played by what was his name? The Brent, is that right?
Brent the Dr. Durner.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, and all right, and stand up.
And the original bass player on that song was also Winnipeg native, Spider Sanuv.
Oh, okay, nice. Speaking of Canadians, what is it about? I don't know. Canadians just they have a certain drive, a very distinct drive compared to Americans. But think about all the bands that have come out of Canada, such as Rush, Triumph, Harem Scarum. What is it about Canadian bands that stand out from the American bands, European bands, all these other bands?
Well, to tell you the truth, we've always considered our sound more aligned with American bands like Rat, Tesla, Guns N' Roses, I mean, LA Guns. In fact, when we were playing in Canada trying to get airplay, one of the problems we encountered in Canada was that we didn't really fit in that well in Canadian radio. But thanks to Howard Manshine with City FM, well, you know Howard, and other people like Tutal in Montreal, we still were able to bridge that gap and get airplay. But I think that part of the reason we have a unique sound is that it's a great big country, and there's long distances between the cities. So in many ways, we were forced to be a traveling jukebox, and so we maybe gravitated more towards commercial sounding songs that were on the radio. However, Helix was kind of the exception to that. We played stuff like Ted Nugent and Aerosmith and Rainbow and Alex Harvey Band and a lot of bands that weren't Canadian. So I don't know. It's not really an answer to your question, but that's the best I can do.
No, no, that settles it. That was perfect. And so, this Helix 50, what makes this different from the previous compilation albums?
Well, they did an Atmos mix of Rock You and the recording of Rock You itself with the different people on it. We have a brand new song that we just wrote called Stand Up, and that is Sted Howland playing drums. And we have Johnny Hyatt playing guitar. Johnny plays guitar for John Bouvier from the Plasmatics. On keyboard, we got Michael T. Ross. Michael plays for Lita Ford for Alda Nova. It was produced by Gord Pryor, and that's about it. That's what makes it so different, I guess. Those two songs especially. And we've used songs from the acoustic album, which haven't been on many previous best of albums, because the previous best of albums were released primarily by Capitol slash EMI, which was inherited by Universal. So they took from their catalog and we took from our catalog. So that's the discrepancy right there.
Oh, speaking of a few of the tracks being acoustic versions, so was that primarily the label's idea to include some acoustic versions, or was that a full round band decision? No doubts.
Mostly the record label. Some of it was a necessity. Like I said, we didn't own the Capitol slash EMI slash Universal catalogs, so they weren't really willing just to give it to us. So some of the songs from those four albums, No Rest of the Wicked, Walking Razor's Edge, Long Way to Heaven, and Wild in the Streets, we couldn't use songs from those albums, so we had to use other recordings that we had on various other Helix albums. I think there's been over 20 Helix albums over the years, so we had 180 something songs to choose from.
Um, and speaking of one of the songs, I'm surprised that I know this is kind of, I don't know if this was like a joke song, but I'm surprised Gene Simmons says Rock is Dead isn't included because I really like that one. It was a lot of fun.
I love that song too. We came up with the idea because there was a Sheryl Crow song called Steve McQueen, and it's kind of an old writing, not trick, but something that writers have done in the past where they take a famous person's name and they include it in the chorus somehow. And when heard about the interview that Gene Simmons did on about how rock is dead, I had my own take on that, and that is no matter if musicians never made another send-off music, you'd still have guys out there with guitars trying to write songs and sell their music. So in one way, he's right. I know what he's saying, that the record industry has changed dramatically. Very difficult nowadays to make it in the biz compared to when we started even. And but if you want to do it bad enough, you can do anything in life.
So you still stand by that statement. Rock is definitely not dead.
Well, I'm still here. Maybe when I die, it'll be gone.
Fair enough. Alright. So, I asked Harry Hess this question actually, and just listening to the stand up and the new version of Rock You, your voice has held up really well. I asked Harry Hess from Harem Scrum this question when I interviewed him a little over a month ago. How do you keep your voice in good shape after all these years?
Well, I lost my voice in 1976. I had nodes or throat polyps, and I was told I would never sing again. That's 1976. How many years ago was that? And my manager at the time sent me to Edward Johnson, who taught out of the basement of a church in Hamilton. And he taught the old Italian method of singing called bel canto or bel voce, beautiful voice, which was started by Leonardo da Vinci in the 1600s and passed down through the ages by the best voice coaches of the time. And bel canto is based on science and anatomy of the body. And it's the only way to sing without having tension on your vocal cords. The problem with a lot of voice teachers nowadays is they don't have a clue what they're doing, quite frankly. And the things they tell students to do aren't based in science. The problem with the voice is you can't really see a voice. Uh, when you learn piano, your fingers are either on the keys or they're not. Same thing with guitars. Guitar, your fingers are on the strings and the right frets. But with a voice, there's a million different ways to make sound. but there's only one way to make sound without destroying your vocal cords. It takes a long time to learn the technique, but some of my students include Tim Hicks, who's had a couple of top 10 hits in the country charts. The girls from Kitty studied from me. Um, Ed used to say to me that the proof of the quality of the technique is always shown in the students that you produce. So I produced a couple good students, and the people that went to Ed were Andy Kern of Coney Hatch, Gilmore of Triumph, Beverly D'Angelo, who's married to Al Pacino, Red Green, who used to be half of Smith and Smith with his wife, Larry Evoy of Edward Bear, Major Hoople's Boarding House, Copper Penny, Cinema Face. I could go on and on and on. So that's proof that this is a great technique and a valuable technique to singers. Back when we started, we sang 3 to 5 sets a night, 6 to 7 nights a week, with a Saturday afternoon matinee on top of it in smoky bars. And a lot of singers were losing their voice, and that's why they always ended up on Ed Johnson's doorstep. And he had a waiting list, and it was an honor if you could actually even get in to be taught by Ed. And now I teach.
I think it's great that now, I mean, I always jokingly say that I think it would be so cool to live in the 70s and 80s, but given the tools that we have now, I think it's great that there are ways to preserve your voice or even preserve your health even because even back then you were allowed to smoke everywhere, but now you can't smoke in certain places. So I do think that it's nice that there's more precautions now just to make sure everyone's all healthy and that sort of thing. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
Well, as for smoking bars, we used to play places like Tilsonburg where you could cut the smoke with a knife. I'd come home and every night after the gig, I'd have to change all my clothes because they just reeked of cigarette smoke. But I think a worse thing for singers is actually just singing high notes and pushing. As soon as you push with your voice, because your high notes on a tenor, a high C is vibrating at 1,000 times a second. That's how many times your vocal cords have to vibrate to create that note. Not only does it take a lot of more breath in those notes, it takes a lot more breath under a lot more pressure. And that's why you see singers singing, they have all this tension down here around the Adam's apple or the thyroid cartilage. And your vocal cords or your vocal folds sit right in the middle of this. And so all that tension is transferred to the vocal folds. They hit each other too violently and they swell up along the inner edges. And you lose the top notes first because your top notes have to vibrate the fastest and that swelling acts as a weight and slows down the frequency of vibration. If you continue doing it long enough, you get nodes or polyps, which are really just a callus. It's your body's way of protecting your vocal cords from the physically bad things that you're doing to it. In bel canto, there's 4 steps. The first step, you learn how to lift your throat. That's why you see all those old Hollywood cats like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett. They're always singing like this with their cheeks up because they're singing in a lifted awe or a yawning position, which takes the tension from down here around the thyroid cartilage or the vocal cords and puts it back here away from the vocal cords where it can do harm. A second step is you aim your voice forward off your hard palate because it's the only hard surface in your mouth. And the third step is inhalation, and that's what nobody else teaches. And that's the act of taking breath into your head, not your vocal cords, not your lungs, but taking breath into your head as you're singing, which creates a vacuum at the back of your throat called Bernoulli's principle, which draws breath up from the lungs across the vocal cords. And it doesn't take any muscles to inhale your voice. And the last step in bel canto is the hold of the breath, or in other words, keeping your diaphragm in a locked, flat position and have the intercostal muscles, which are between your ribs, pulling around your lungs. And that's it. And it takes about, I don't know, a lifetime to learn.
I mean, there are certain, especially Harry mentioned this when I interviewed him. He did say that he did have to make adjustments to his voice because, no, even back then you were singing all these high notes. I mean, high notes and screaming and all this sort of stuff. I mean, you didn't know back then that was gonna do harm to your voice. You learned that from experience and, like you said, learning and adapting new methods.
Yeah, and a lot of singers get into things that they think help make their voice better, but they're like a soother. They're not really based in science. For instance, a lot of singers push their stomach out thinking they're using their diaphragm. False. A lot of singers think that by opening their mouth, they get the sound out more. False. A lot of singers think that your mouth forms addiction, and that's why they get going ooh, 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 like a bring a trained seal, right? When your mouth has actually very little to do with diction. Your tongue forms the vowels, and your tongue and your teeth form the consonants. In fact, when you sing in bel canto, you always sing in what's called dummy face. Nothing from here on up moves, or is supposed to move anyway.
Um, all right, and looking back on your career,
Hmm.
like whether it's a band decision or album that turned out that didn't really meet your expectations, or maybe a tour that gone wrong, anything like that. Looking back, is there anything you wish you could have done differently during your career? I mean, besides, you know, learning all these different methods to protect your voice, that sort of thing. But is there anything you wish you could have done differently in your career?
I probably wish I would have learned to play an instrument, guitar or piano, something like that. Um, I find that I would have used it a lot more, I think, in writing as I got older. But you can't change the past, and that's just the way it was. And been blessed with the career I've had. I've met a lot of great people on my journey, and I still have a lot of great people to meet. Every week I'm meeting new people. A couple of weeks ago, I got up and sang with Steel Panther. That was a laugh. I've never met those guys before. A year ago, I met one of my favorite bands, Blackberry Smoke, and Charlie Starr. So that's the real, how can I say, rewards of being in the business. Because after a while, money isn't as important as other things like just getting respect from your peers.
Oh my gosh, you saw Blackberry Smoke? Are they really that? How are they live? I've been curious to see them live. How are they?
They're excellent. Excellent. I've seen them several times now. They're a great band. They write great songs. And it's funny because a lot of people don't know about them, but they've had many songs at the top of Billboard. So they're out there.
I learned about them from the Black Crows, and then I listened to a couple of their tracks. Like, oh, these guys are pretty good. Like, it's going back to that statement, like, rock is not dead. There are still people that are trying to keep the rock and roll spirit alive. So, I think they're definitely one of the bands that have helped with that. And I don't know if you heard about the story. Did you hear that story about how Charlie Starr, he played Gary Rossington's guitar from Freebird? Did you hear about that?
No.
Oh, I read an article about that. He was using the Red Gibson
Mhm.
that Gary used to do the slide part on. I know he did. I think he did it for at least a couple of shows. But I mean, if Gary Rossington's family let Charlie Starr used his guitar, that's gotta mean something.
Yeah, I'd say. Well, Charlie Starr, what goes around comes around. When I met Blackberry Smoke here when they played in London, set me up with backstage passes, and I went back, and I've never met the band before, and Charlie came right over and gave me a hug, and I was just like I didn't know what to say. I was overwhelmed, and then I think it was the bass player who said, "I saw you guys in Dayton, Ohio, back in 1983." So.
Right, and shifting gears, going back to the Helix 50, one of my favorite songs from the compilation album is That Day Is Gonna Come, which is a tribute to the late great Paul Hackman. Do you have any fun or interesting memories you want to share from?
Well, Paul was a great songwriter. He had a different way of hearing a guitar. Like everybody liked the guy. The lineup we had in the 80s, which was myself, Greg Fritz Hines, who passed away last year, Brent Durner, myself, and Daryl. Everybody in the band was totally different but unique, and we all got along. It was kind of like the process of elimination over the years. People left, and then we had stronger members join the band, and the lineup during the '80s was a very special lineup. The world lost a great rock and roller when Paul Hackman died. Same with Fritz. Uh, but Paul was a fisherman. He loved fishing out in the Lake Huron. He had a boat charter service. He used to go out there, and he was just a great guy. He was a little bit older than everybody else. He came from St. Thomas, Ontario, which he called Little Chicago. He used to tell me that him and his buddy Thunder used to go to the top of the water tower, stone a mescaline, lay on their back, and look at the sky at night.
Speaking of lineups, there has been a revolving door around in Helix. So has that been a little bit difficult trying to, find that chemistry again with new lineups? Because I know some bands like Megadeth and Black Crowes have done that with a revolving door of lineups. But how has it been for Helix to adjust to new lineups and that sort of thing?
Well, there's always an adjustment period. I'm the only person left from the original six people that got together in Kitchener, Ontario, way back in 1974. And there's a different story why everybody left and why different people joined. Um, the lineup we got now is fairly easy to slide into because you take Mark Chichkin that plays guitar for us. Mark was with the same management company, uh, William Site Management. Chris Jilke joined the band in 2014, and he had already been playing with, I think, Daryl and his weekend band, Scurvy Dogs. So they knew the routine. They were part of the William Sipes School of Rock, let's say. And we got a certain way we run things in the band. It's very organized. I know we might not seem like the most organized guys in the world, but actually we are. Time is very important. Like if you're supposed to show up at a certain time, you show up at that time, not 10 minutes, not 15 minutes later. And we expect professionalism. We expect the people in the band to be polite to our fans, polite to people we work for, and to conduct themselves accordingly. And they do. They're all great guys. I have total loyalty from my guys in my band. And the newest member is Jamie Constant. And Jamie came to the band when Fritz got sick. And Fritz handpicked Jamie just like Caleb back in the day was picked by Brent, handpicked. And Jamie was actually going to a hockey practice many years ago, and he decided instead to go to see Helix at the local high school, and that's how he got into rock. So, great pick. We cheap seats, please.
I mean, he definitely made the right call to skip hockey practice. I heard that story in another interview. I just thought that was so badass.
Well, I remember when Jeff Fountain was in the band, he told me, he says, I come out to see the band way back, and I had a brand new jacket on, and he said, you jumped in the audience and you grabbed me and you ripped the friggin' hole in the jacket. So some of the people had connections with the band before they were actually in the band, and they all had their own little funny story.
I mean, I think it sort of helps to have that connection to the band because, um, not that, not that I'll say that. Well, actually, I will say that it gives them, it helps them to see how a little bit of how the band works and the music that they had to play and just the expectations because they're familiar with the band. I don't know if that makes any sense or if you have anything else you want to add.
Well, you can't plan out things like that. They just happen. It's fate. And the most important thing, and I tell this to my students all the time, is just keep moving forward. Just work hard, stay focused, keep moving forward one step at a time. Sometimes it's very difficult and you want to pack it in. And I've done it many times where I went, this is it, I can't handle this no more. And then, I wake up the next day and I got a better attitude, and I continue on. So that's my advice to young people that are getting into this business. On one hand, it looks very dark, and you go, "How am I ever going to make money in doing this and survive?" But if you just, sometimes you can never see what's around the corner. Um, there was a time when we thought the band was over, and then suddenly along come these three guys that lived in this Sunnyvale trailer park, named the Trailer Park Boys, and our career was revived for 3 or 4 years there just because of those guys. So you never know, you never know. But God's looking after each and every one of us, and if you have faith, you'll pull through.
Absolutely. And all right, so going forward, besides Helix 50, what else can we expect from the band going forward?
Well, we're always writing. We're always putting out new music. I'd like to put out a book called The Golden Age of the Canadian Bar Circuit. I've been working on it since 2000. And it's a book about a very special time in Canadian musical history when bands were able to play bars right from Atlantic to Pacific. And Helix was the first band to ever play from Atlantic to Pacific through the bars. And I even know the day we touched the Pacific, and it was the day Mount St. Helens blew up. So I'll never forget that day. But it allowed us to hone our craft, to become better musicians, better singers, better showmen, and mature as individuals. Because if you were a deck, you probably didn't last long. The road would spit you out.
I think that book, I think that book sounds great, and looking forward, looking forward to hearing more about it in the future.
Thanks.
Right?
I'm also going to do a book or a video on what I teach, which is bel canto. I'm probably one of the last people in the world, totally by accident, to teach the oldest and best classical form of singing in the world, which it doesn't matter if you're singing rock, folk, or classical, the same principles apply because you're, once again, science and the anatomy of the body. It doesn't change if you're playing singing a different type of music. So I want to get that out too. I think there is information out there how the it works, but there's not information out there on actually how to teach it. And I've been teaching now since 1989. So there's a lot of in and outs and subtleties, and once again, you can't see a voice. So you have to be able to, as a singer, to be ascertain when the person's doing it correctly or incorrectly.
Well, both of those projects sound amazing, and what best of luck on how those turn out, those books turn out. And all right, so before we wrap up, is there any? Well, first of all, Helix 50. Since it's already out, where can people get the album? PlanetHelix.com, is that correct?
I believe you can get it on, yes, planethelix.com. It's through Crown X Recordings and through, is it Merch in Motion, Jay? Rock Paper Merch. So, .com. Rockpapermerch.com.
All right, perfect. So just in a couple minutes or two, is there any last words you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
I'd just like to thank our Canadian fans, well, fans everywhere for that matter. You've kept us going over the years. Without you, we wouldn't exist 50 years later. So we owe it to you.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your time.
Welcome.
I
Thank you
really
for having
appreciate
me. Anna,
it. All right, thank you so much, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
okay, see you around. Don't be square, see you on catch you on the flip side. Whoosh.